Picture this. Somewhere in the heart of France, archaeologists unearth a burial site containing 120 ancient skulls. As they clear away the dirt, they notice something truly mind-blowing. 40 of those skulls have clean, deliberately drilled holes right through the bone. But here is the real kicker. The bone tissue around those margins had actually grown back. This means whoever underwent this brutal procedure was very much alive when it happened. And not only that, they survived it. We are talking about a time roughly 8,500 years ago. Long before medicine was backed by clinical trials, before peer-reviewed journals, and before anyone even knew what a germ was, humans were already desperately trying to heal one another. They didn't have a choice. Violent infections, shattered bones, raging fevers that refused to break, and deep wounds that simply wouldn't close. The human body failed regularly, and the community had to act. What they developed over tens of thousands of years of trial, error, and intense observation is one of the most brilliant yet completely underappreciated chapters in the entire human story. The very first medical tool in our arsenal was also the most enduring one: plants. And let's be clear, early humans weren't just blindly guessing or eating random leaves. They were master observers of the natural world. They watched chimpanzees, when riddled with debilitating intestinal parasites, deliberately seek out specific, bitter leaves they would completely ignore under normal circumstances. They noticed bears with severe digestive distress, digging up and chewing particular roots. Ancient humans watched these patterns play out across generations. They remembered them, they tested them, and they gradually constructed a massive, complex body of medical knowledge out of absolutely nothing but sustained, disciplined attention to nature. And for the longest time, this sacred knowledge was held almost exclusively by women. As the primary gatherers of the tribe, women possessed the deepest intimacy with the local flora. They were the ones managing day-to-day illness within the group. For millennia, this information was never written down. It traveled forward through time the only way it could, passed down verbally from mother to daughter, carried entirely within the vault of human memory, thousands of years before anyone ever thought to press a single word into clay. The hard archaeological proof we have today is nothing short of stunning. Take Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq, a Neanderthal burial site dating back a staggering 60,000 years. Soil analysis revealed high concentrations of pollen from yarrow, ephedra, and chamomile right around the remains. Every single one of these plants has confirmed modern-day medicinal properties. These weren't food sources, and they didn't get there by accident. They were placed in that grave deliberately. Or look at Ötzi the Iceman, the famous mummy discovered frozen in the Alps after 5,300 years. Kept safely among his personal belongings was a specific fungus known as birch polypore. When modern scientists took it to the lab, they confirmed it contains powerful antibacterial properties. This man was traveling through treacherous, freezing peaks more than 5 millennia ago, and he was intentionally carrying a first aid kit. But botanical remedies were only the beginning. What happened when the body broke down so severely that plants weren't enough? That brings us to trepanation, the ancient practice of cutting, scraping, or drilling a hole directly into a living person's skull. It stands today as the oldest surgical procedure for which we have definitive, undeniable archaeological evidence. And here's the most fascinating part. It wasn't some isolated, bizarre anomaly. It emerged completely independently across every single inhabited continent on Earth. Cultures with absolutely zero possibility of contact, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, all arrived at the exact same extreme surgical intervention through their own separate paths. That incredible convergence alone tells us everything we need to know about both the universality of human suffering and the sheer resourcefulness of our response to it. At Neolithic sites along the Dnieper River in Ukraine, evidence of trepanation dates back roughly 12,000 BCE. Down in Peru, researchers studying ancient Incan skulls found something that shocks modern doctors. During certain eras, the survival rates for this prehistoric skull surgery were actually higher than the survival rates for the exact same procedure performed in British and European hospitals during the 19th century. Why? The difference wasn't mechanical skill, it was the environment. Ancient patients recovered outside in the fresh, open air. 19th century patients recovered in filthy, cramped hospital wards packed with other infected people, making post-operative infections almost universally fatal. The motives behind trepanation were complex and layered. For traumatic head injuries, the procedure made genuine medical sense. Scraping away displaced bone fragments and relieving the fatal pressure caused by intracranial bleeding are the exact core principles of neurosurgery today. However, they also performed it for epilepsy, crippling migraines, and conditions we would now diagnose as severe psychiatric disorders. Back then, the prevailing belief was that a hostile spirit or a dark, malevolent force had physically invaded the patient's head. The hole was quite literally an escape hatch for the demon. Their explanation was fundamentally wrong, but their results were sometimes miraculously right. And that fascinating gap between incorrect reasoning and correct medical outcomes is a pattern that repeats itself constantly throughout history. This brings us directly to the figure of the shaman. Every ancient culture, by one name or another, had this spiritual healer. While their specific rituals varied wildly across the globe, their core function was identical. A single individual acting as a bridge between the vulnerable sick patient and the unseen forces believed to be causing the affliction. To achieve this, shamans used plants, but they also weaponized performance, ritualistic chanting, hypnotic rhythmic percussion, theatrical movement, smoke, and structured ceremonies conducted right in front of the entire community. To a modern viewer, raised on sterile clinics and white lab coats, this looks like mere showmanship. It's easy to dismiss it as theater, but that cynical instinct misses a profound biological reality. When a human being genuinely, deeply believes they are being healed, the brain doesn't just sit idly by. It triggers an immediate physical response. Endorphin production spikes, cortisol levels plummet, and the immune system shifts gears in measurable physical ways. This is what we now call the placebo effect, a genuine, powerful physiological cascade initiated entirely by belief, expectation, and community support. The ancient shaman, operating with zero knowledge of neuroscience or biochemistry, was reliably hacking the human nervous system through the pure architecture of ritual and the collective weight of communal belief. Modern medicine has poured millions into studying this exact phenomenon, and frankly, it continues to find the placebo effect far more powerful than most doctors are comfortable admitting. Of course, not every ancient practice was elegant. Some are much harder to look back on charitably, but they are equally telling. Take geophagy, the intentional eating of specific clays or dirt, documented across dozens of ancient cultures. Today, we know that certain natural clays chemically bind to dangerous gastrointestinal toxins, effectively neutralizing them, while simultaneously providing trace minerals the body cannot synthesize on its own. It was a crude but effective internal filter. By around 3000 BCE, humanity reached a massive turning point. In Mesopotamia, medical knowledge transitioned from oral tradition into the physical world, pressed firmly into clay tablets. These weren't just lists of herbs, they were the birth of diagnostic reasoning. They used conditional logic. If the patient presents with X symptom, then apply Y treatment. This was the very bedrock of systematic medicine. Shortly after, Egypt produced the legendary Ebers papyrus, a massive scroll containing over 700 medical formulations. Remarkably, some of those ancient plants are the direct genetic ancestors of the blockbusters sitting in your local pharmacy right now. Willow bark, which they prescribed for pain and fever, contains salicin, the exact compound chemists later synthesized to create aspirin. The opium poppy, which they used for sleep and severe pain, is the direct origin of our entire modern opioid class of medication. They didn't understand the molecular chemistry, but they knew the real-world outcomes. When you zoom out and look at this vast tapestry of ancient history, it's easy to focus on the bizarre surgeries and the herbal recipes. But there is a deeper truth that is so easy to overlook. Ancient humans weren't just trying to patch up broken bodies. They were caring for people. When sickness struck a prehistoric community, the response was never isolating. It was deeply collective. The rituals brought the whole tribe together. The sick individual was held, watched over, and made intensely aware that their suffering had been recognized by the group, and that something was being done about it. After decades of clinical research on patient outcomes, modern medicine has arrived, sometimes quite reluctantly, at the exact same conclusion. Social connection is not some secondary feel-good variable in the healing process. It is a primary biological driver. Feeling genuinely cared for alters our physiology. Being seen in the depths of your suffering changes the actual course of an illness in ways that are deeply physical, not just psychological. Ancient humans didn't have MRI machines. They didn't have antibiotics, and they didn't have sterile operating theaters. But what they did have was 60,000 years of disciplined observation and an innate, profound understanding embedded in their very culture that a human being in pain is not just a biological problem to be solved. Some of what they discovered, we eventually threw away. Some of it we painfully rediscovered, studied under microscopes, and gave shiny new names. And some of it, without even realizing it, we never stopped doing.